The sun hung low over the Montana plains, painting the sky in shades of copper and gold. Dust settled on the weathered boards of the old homestead, where Sarah Mitchell sat on the porch steps, mending a torn shirt. Her fingers worked the needle with practiced ease, though her mind wandered far from the simple task at hand. Life on the frontier was hard. Everyone knew that. But for Sarah it had become something more than hard. It had become impossible. 3 months had passed since her husband Thomas died. A rattlesnake bite, quick and merciless. One moment he was checking the fence line near the creek. The next he was gasping for air, his face turning gray. Sarah had ridden for the doctor, but the nearest town was 15 miles away. By the time she returned, Thomas was gone. Now she sat alone on the land they had built together, watching the shadows grow long across the dirt yard. The cattle had been sold weeks ago to pay the debts. The chickens were down to just 3 hens, and the bank had sent another letter, this one more direct than the others. She had until the end of the month. Sarah set down her mending and looked out at the horizon. The wind moved through the tall grass like waves on an ocean, steady and endless. She thought about her father's house back in St. Louis, the offer to return that came in every letter from her sister. But going back felt like admitting defeat, like saying that Thomas had died for nothing. A sound caught her attention. Hoofbeats coming up the long road from town. Sarah stood and shaded her eyes against the setting sun. A lone rider approached, sitting tall in the saddle, his shadow stretching long behind him. She didn't recognize him at first. Strangers rarely came out this far unless they were lost or looking for trouble. But as he drew closer, she could see he was neither young nor old. Somewhere in that middle distance where a man's face shows both experience and possibility. He wore a brown hat with a red bandana tied loose around his neck, and his horse was a fine chestnut mare that looked well cared for. The rider stopped at the fence and touched the brim of his hat. "Evening, ma'am. Name's James Carson. I'm looking for the Mitchell property." Sarah wiped her hands on her apron and walked down the steps. "You found it." "I'm Sarah Mitchell." James dismounted with the easy grace of someone who had spent more time in the saddle than out of it. He tied his horse to the fence post and turned to face her fully. His eyes were kind, she noticed. Gray-blue, like storm clouds over the mountains. "I heard in town that you might be looking to sell," he said. "I've been scouting land in this area, and your property has water rights." That's valuable. Sarah's heart sank. So that's what this was. Another buyer, another offer that would barely cover what she owed. She had heard it all before. "I'm not interested in selling," she said, though the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. James nodded slowly, not pushing. "I understand. It's your home, but if you don't mind me saying, ma'am, I saw some of your fences on the way in. They need work. And your barn roof has a hole big enough to see from the road." "I'm aware of the condition of my property," Sarah said, a edge creeping into her voice. "I'm sure you are," James said gently. "I didn't mean any offense. I just thought maybe we could help each other out." Sarah crossed her arms. "And how would that work?" James glanced at the house, then back at her. "I've got carpentry skills. Learned from my father, who learned from his. I can fix your fences, patch your roof, do whatever needs doing around here. In exchange, you let me stay in the bunkhouse and take meals with you until the work is done." "I don't have money to pay you," Sarah said flatly. "Didn't ask for money." James replied, "Just a place to rest my head and some honest food." "I've been on the trail for 3 weeks and I'm tired of my own cooking." Sarah studied him carefully. There had to be a catch. Men didn't just offer their labor for free, not in her experience. But she found herself wanting to trust him, and that made her suspicious of herself. "Why would you do that?" she asked. James looked out at the land, at the hills rolling away into the distance. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. "I lost my wife 2 years ago. Fever took her. We had a place down in Wyoming, but after she was gone, I couldn't stay there anymore. Everything reminded me of her. So I sold it, and I've been moving around ever since. Working where I can, trying to figure out what comes next." He turned back to Sarah. "I guess I'm offering because I know what it's like to feel like you're drowning, and everyone's walking by on dry land." Something in Sarah's chest loosened. She understood that feeling all too well. "The bunkhouse hasn't been used in months," she said. "It'll need cleaning." James smiled, and it changed his whole face. "I'm pretty good at cleaning, too." That night, Sarah lay in her bed and listened to the sounds of James settling into the bunkhouse. She heard him moving around, the creak of the old cot, the sound of water being poured. She wondered if she had made a mistake, letting a stranger stay on her property. But something about him felt solid, trustworthy. The next morning, she woke to the sound of hammering. She dressed quickly and went outside to find James already on the barn roof, working on the hole that had been leaking rain into the hay below. He had his shirt off in the early heat, and she could see the lean muscle of his back as he worked. "You're up early," she called. He looked down and grinned. "Old habit. My father always said the best work gets done before the sun gets mean." Sarah made breakfast, more than she had made for herself in months. Eggs from the hens, biscuits with the last of her flour, coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in. James came in when she rang the bell, his face dusty but his eyes bright. "This is quite a spread," he said. Sitting at the table, "It's the least I can do," Sarah said. They ate in comfortable silence, and Sarah found herself watching him. The way he moved with deliberate care, the way he nodded in appreciation at the food. Thomas had been different, more boisterous, always talking. James was quieter, more contained, but there was something steady about him that made her feel anchored. Over the next 2 weeks, James worked from dawn until dusk. He repaired all the fences, fixed the barn roof, replaced 3 rotted boards on the porch, and cleaned out the well. Sarah worked alongside him when she could, holding boards steady while he nailed them in place, bringing him water when the sun climbed high. They talked while they worked. James told her about growing up in Colorado, about learning to break horses when he was 12, about his wife Clara who could make a garden grow in the middle of a drought. Sarah told him about Thomas, about their dreams of building a cattle empire, about how quickly those dreams had crumbled. "Do you think we're fools?" Sarah asked one afternoon. They were sitting in the shade of the barn, taking a break from the heat. "For dreaming big out here?" James took a long drink from his canteen and considered the question. "I think we're human," he said. "We dream because that's what keeps us going. Maybe some dreams don't work out the way we planned, but that doesn't make us fools. Just makes us people trying to live." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away. "The bank is going to take this place," she said. "No matter how good it looks, I can't pay what I owe." James was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a silver dollar. He held it up between them, catching the light. "Tell you what," he said. "I'll make you a deal." Sarah looked at the coin, confused. "What kind of deal?" "I'll give you this dollar," James said. "And in exchange, you take off that wedding ring you're still wearing." Sarah's hand went instinctively to the simple gold band on her finger. She had worn it every day since Thomas put it there, had worn it through his death and all the lonely months after. Taking it off felt like betraying him, like saying goodbye all over again. "I don't understand," she whispered. James leaned forward, his eyes earnest. "Sarah, I've watched you these past 2 weeks. You're strong and capable and you don't give up easy. But you're carrying something that's weighing you down. That ring is a chain to the past, to all the hurt and loss. I'm not asking you to forget Thomas or stop loving him. I'm asking you to let yourself move forward. For a dollar?" Sarah said, her voice catching. "For the freedom to choose what comes next?" James said. "I've been moving around for 2 years, running from my grief. But being here, working beside you, I realized something. I don't want to run anymore. I want to stay. I want to help you keep this place, if you'll let me. Not as a hired hand or a stranger, but as a partner. As someone who sees a future here." Sarah looked at the dollar, then at James, then down at her ring. Her heart was pounding. This wasn't what she had expected. She had thought she would lose everything, had resigned herself to defeat. But here was this man, this unexpected presence in her life, offering not just help, but hope. "You want to stay?" she asked. "Here?" "If you'll have me," James said. "I've got money saved from selling my place in Wyoming. Enough to pay off your debt to the bank and then some. We could rebuild together, make this place into something strong again. I'm not asking you to love me, Sarah. I know that's not how it works. But I'm asking you to let me try to make you happy." Sarah's hands trembled as she twisted the ring on her finger. She thought about Thomas, about the dreams they had shared. She thought about all the lonely nights, all the fear and exhaustion, and she thought about the sound of James's hammer in the morning, the quiet companionship of their meals, the way he